Alright, hey guys, it's Dan Sfera from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. I'm here with Patrick Stone. He's one of my more popular guests, constantly one of the most popular guests and one of the most views generated is our interviews. I think we've done 2 or 3 really long interviews, maybe more already, maybe like 5.
Yeah, we've done like 5.
So this one won't be that long. We've both got to run, but it'll be shorter length. And we're gonna be talking a lot about monitoring. So Pat, for those of you who don't know, he wrote a book. You can buy it anywhere, called Bubblegum Bad, right? So he's a former FDA auditor, and now he's a consultant. So he's working with a lot of CROs, a lot of pharma companies. When they get in trouble, even research sites too, when they get in trouble, they call Pat, because Pat knows what the FDA is looking for. Why? Because he worked for the FDA. So you don't want to hire someone who doesn't know what they're doing. You want to hire someone like Pat. And if someone wants to get a hold of you, Pat, where do they go?
Well, they can go to my website, tradestoneqa.com, or they can look me up on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm on most social medias. I'm easy to find.
Easily accessible.
Easily accessible. I have an open door policy, and I'm willing to work with everyone.
And you really believe in the be everywhere philosophy, right?
Definitely,
That's
yeah.
That's the one I subscribe to also. Instagram, doesn't matter what. People usually think, what does clinical trial have to do with Instagram? Well, the point is you're getting yourself out there. So for those of you who want to promote yourself, learn how to do that. You shouldn't be scared of any social platform. But if you do get on it, use it the way the natives are using it. So speak like the natives. Okay?
Definitely.
So Pat, a lot's been going on as far as the monitoring and risk-based monitoring, and there's a lot of sloppy monitoring out there, right?
Definitely. I've been to 4 sites this year with heavy monitor issues, a lot of 43 items that could have been resolved sooner had the monitors caught it sooner. And the thing with monitoring and catching it early is a small error can turn into a really big one if it goes on for 2 years. So that's what I'm seeing is really small errors that can be easily fixed that go unchecked for years or for months.
So what are like 3 of the more common ones that you've seen?
Well, I've seen a lot of transcription errors, which is becoming less common because everything's going to electronic data capture. But a lot of pharma companies, they are still using paper, and that's where the transcription errors come. Testable accountability errors or missed dosage errors.
Okay.
Those are critical errors that I see. Also,
so they're making mistakes as far as dosing the subject, which would be a huge safety issue, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And so these are all risk-based indicators, and they should be reviewed at every monitor visit. And it seems like these monitors are having less time maybe, or logistical errors, or what have you, but they're short on time. So then that's when the mistakes come in, when they're short on time. And one other critical error that I'm finding also is with unblinded and blinded capacities. A lot of times the...
you mean if you have like a blinded staff member and an unblinded staff member?
The mix-ups, yeah. So a blinded person doesn't do the assessment. An unblinded person does it, and it's supposed to be a blinded assessment.
Right.
So I see a lot of these type of errors as well, and it really messes up the statistical analysis.
So is that something the FDA is really cracking down on, or what are they cracking down on these days? In 2014, what are they looking at?
Well, FDA is now has just put out the risk-based monitoring guidelines. So they're not really looking for how many times a site has been monitored. They're looking for how well it has been monitored. Quality over quantity.
And what are the metrics that they use?
Well, the metrics is in the errors that they find. So
okay.
How many errors you find, and how significant are those errors, and do they inhibit the statistical analysis or skew the data in some way. So these are critical errors. FDA is really focusing on what they've always focused on, the basics. They want to see, I think the biggest 43 item to date is still not following the protocol. That's like the biggest 43 citation.
Right.
And then they go down
Protocol deviations.
Protocol deviations and not following the protocol. That could be a violation as well, depending on what the situation is. So
Yeah.
these are what they're focusing on currently, is just the risk-based metrics. You know, primary efficacy data, secondary efficacy data, safety issues, test article accountability. These are the basics, and they find issues often.
Right. We were talking off camera about some findings that you were discovering at different research sites, and you said most of the time, or a majority of the time, it's a combination of bad sites and bad monitoring. And why do you think? Because monitoring, at least 5 years ago, back when I started 10 years ago in research, but about 5 years ago I started noticing more errors when it comes to the monitors and the work that they do. Is it because they're overworked? Does risk-based monitoring have a lot to do with it? Or, I mean, what's the reason for this sloppy monitoring? Because it didn't always, I mean, it wasn't always like this bad.
Well, it seems that more individuals are getting into the contract monitoring. So it's more of the big companies that used to be the monitoring gurus, or the go-to CROs. They've let go of a lot of folks, and those individuals, they make up their own companies and go out on their own way. And so a lot of times, you know, they don't have the backup, and they don't have the knowledge base, really, because what I'm seeing also is some of these monitors are not scientific background people.
Right.
They're English majors or history majors.
Right.
And they take a few courses and think, oh, you know, I can get this. And now all of a sudden I'm going to know pharmaceutical products, and I'm going to know how to run a clinical trial. And yeah, most of us that have been in this for over 10 years know that it takes a very long time to get up to speed on doing a clinical trial audit or monitoring a clinical trial, and it takes professional training for years.
Right. And last thing as we wrap up, we were talking earlier about what generally triggers FDA audits, and you said there's only 300 a year. So the FDA only audits 300 sites worldwide.
Worldwide, clinical investigator sites, right.
Okay, so the FDA only audits 300 clinical investigator sites worldwide every year. So your chances of getting audited are slim, but it can happen. And you were talking about what triggers it, and you said it's...
A lot of times the trigger is the sponsor submits for approval of that product. But many times it's a for-cause audit where there's a complaint, or there's a safety issue, or even there's monitoring issues that the sponsor raises, because I'm seeing that a lot more, where the sponsor is actually complaining about the monitoring and the CRO that they went with. And so that'll trigger an audit, because the FDA wants to maximize their efficiency. Even though they have no efficiency, they want to, every site they go to, they want to know that either there's going to be an issue, or, you know, with the for-cause audit, they kind of go in knowing there's going to be 43 items,
Right.
and that maximizes their effect. And because then they know that they'll have a compliance case. But sometimes there's a complaint and there's no issues. You can't find any reason why the sponsor complained or the subject complained.
Huh.
And
So
and
the
I've seen that
sponsor
too.
The sponsor would complain to the FDA, or what?
Yes,
Really?
the sponsor puts in a formal complaint. Sometimes it's anonymous. Sometimes they name themselves,
Really?
because you can do anonymous complaints. And
Which
that
one do they do the most?
The most is anonymous,
Really?
because of the legal repercussions. If
Yeah.
a sponsor complains about a monitor or about a CRO, they and then the CRO gets a 43, and then they lose business. Well, that was because of the complaint.
Right.
So who do you go after because you lost revenue?
Right.
The sponsor.
Right. See, where else can you get this insider information other than the clinical trial guru? That's awesome. And I've had the theory that now with the low supply of studies, sponsors are actually making similar protocols and letting different CROs run these protocols, and then they will pick and choose which one they want to actually continue with, and the other study they'll just stop it. I've been noticing a lot of that, and a lot of sites, it's affecting a lot of sites because a lot of research sites are only getting one of those few studies, right? And so those are two different CROs. CROs give it to a bunch of sites, and a year through the trial, one of those studies will be canceled, the other one will continue. So I think we are onto something here when it comes to sponsors being a little dissatisfied with the CROs.
Well, so for the past 5 years, CROs have been conglomerating and buying each other out.
Right.
And now they're in sort of a holding pattern, and they're letting some of their people go now.
Right.
Because the pipelines are tight.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of pipelines that are ongoing right now, and many sponsors are just changing their formulations or getting ready for their products to drop off into the generic side.
You predict more clinical trials next year or less?
I'm predicting that in the next 5 years there will be more clinical trials because we've had a lull in the action, and because of the drug shortages and because of the other issues that cause pharma to react, like the drug shortage issues, and these things should be reactionary for most pharma companies to know that, hey, we need to get in there and start getting our pipelines oiled up.
Okay. Well, thank you, Pat. I know you got to run. I appreciate the time. And where can people get a hold of you again? Let them know. TradeStoneQA.com, or just Googling Patrick Stone, comma FDA. You can see a list of some of the warning letters and some of the actions that I had while I was with FDA. And I appreciate all of your viewers for listening. Yeah, and if you get in trouble, give Pat a call. Don't attempt to handle it by yourself.
Right.
All right.
It's best to go with the people that know FDA and know what they expect.
That's right. Well, thank you, Pat. And this is Dan from theclinicaltrialsguru.com.